Welcome to the Power of Design podcast, where we have inspiring conversations that explore the intersection of architecture, construction, and real estate, so we can understand the dynamics and trends that shape an exciting and powerful built environment. This is your host, Jack Osa. In today's episode of The Power of Design, I'm talking to Bill Guandolo. Bill is a regional vice president with Tarkett, a multinational corporation specializing in the production of flooring products. As an experienced sales professional with more than 25 years of experience, Bill uses his approachable personality and knowledge of marketing and branding to lead his team and clients and develop strong personal relationships that create business results. This is my conversation with Bill. Bill, welcome to the Power of Design podcast. How are you today?
Doing fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Bill, for more than 20 years, you have been collaborating with architects, designers, and end users working in the commercial flooring industry. What is the key to develop strong business relationships in the design and construction industry?
Well, I think it's always about people. And so it's first getting to know them as people first, and then their business needs. At least that's the way I've always tried to approach it, because I think it starts and ends with a personal relationship.
Sure. Do you think some people try to start with that transaction end in mind and maybe skip over the relationships? And
I do. I've definitely seen that. And listen, that can work too for people that don't want a relationship and they want a product and that's it.
Yeah.
So that can work for them. But for me, I think strong long-term relationships are built first, and then that turns into a professional relationship.
Sure. Yeah. It's like a natural response to you just make the transaction. You want to make things happen. You want to see it. And
right.
Sometimes we forget that, probably the long game is going to be the best game for our end, which is, to do the transaction.
Well, absolutely. And what I've seen in my experience has been when I get to know somebody and they get to know me and they know that I care, or they know that people on my team care, then when something goes right or wrong, they're much more apt to listen and trust and understand what's going on. And that personal relationship helps both sides get what they need in the business.
Yeah. Cool. Tell me about yourself, Bill. Where are you from?
So I grew up outside of the Washington, D.C. area. I grew up in Maryland. And rather than going to University of Maryland, where all my friends went, I ended up going to North Carolina State. That's how I got to North Carolina.
Oh, interesting. And tell me about when you were growing up, when you were a kid, what kind of things did you do?
That's interesting. I was probably an athlete most. I loved sports. My father, interestingly enough, worked for the Smithsonian Institution, and he wasn't an architect, but he built projects for them, so he managed architects. And he brought that home, so pretty much every weekend of my high school life, I was building something for my father, whether it was an addition to the house or laying bricks or whatever. So I got my hands dirty, not by choice, but by force. So I got a good, got my toes wet, if you will, into the construction business at an early age.
Nice. And when you got the time when you were in high school and when kind of deciding what to do with your life, what decision did you make and why?
After high school, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I liked the idea of business, but I didn't know what that meant in high school. And I liked marketing. So when I got to North Carolina State, I kept on thinking, what am I going to do? I'll tell you a quick story. I called my grandfather, who was an attorney in New York City, midway through college. And I said, "Grandfather, I'm not sure what to do. I think I want to go get my MBA. I think I want to, study business." And he told me, he said, "Listen, I interview people every day. The two things that I see, the best of the best that came to his firm," he said, "a lot of our talent are very bright, but the two things they struggle with are writing and speaking, particularly speaking in front of people." So he said, "If I were you, I would learn to write and speak as well as possible. And then if you want to continue your business studies, then go get your MBA or go study it in other places and keep learning.
That's a really good advice because, those are two things that are key on, that's communication. And if you know how to communicate, you know how to influence people.
Exactly. And that's what he was trying to teach me at a younger age. So.
That's great. I always think about basic education system, for middle schoolers or even high school, and you go and you learn about these topics and, kind of a little bit of everything. But there are many key skills in life that they don't teach you, like, public speaking, managing money, emotional intelligence, decision making, all these things that we use every day as adults, but nobody teaches us that.
You are really pushing my buttons because right now in our family, I have one son who's 13. We actually have formulated a list of life skills that he must learn before he leaves high school.
Good.
And everything you just mentioned is on that list, as well as some other things.
Nice. So. we should start a school.
Exactly.
The school of life.
That's right.
Okay, and tell me about your experience at NC State.
Well, like I said, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I played football for a couple of years there, that was my athletic career continuing. I only played for 2 years. And then after that, I started to work for a television station, a radio station. I knew I wanted to be in marketing.
Yeah.
And that was my background. I was studying it, studying business, communications, marketing. And the career was great. I had a fantastic speech teacher, really taught me how to think on my feet and speak to large groups of people. I took business communication classes, and that was my love. I was fascinated by it. I was fascinated by television and radio and marketing and reaching large groups of people and how that worked.
Nice.
So I loved the experience. I did not pursue my full marketing career right out of college because I knew I had to move to New York City really to get into it the way I wanted to.
Right.
And I just decided not to move to the city.
So after graduating, what was your first job?
So I went to work for a textile company, Milliken, out of college, and I had no idea what that was going to look like, and that's how I got into sales.
Okay.
Honestly, I didn't really even understand what a sales career was, but people kept on asking me to interview for things. I believe it was because I had the communication skills that some of the other graduates did not. And so once I got into sales, that's how I got into this industry. And I tried to use my marketing knowledge and skills like that in my sales career as I was developing.
Nice. In the last 3 years since I've started my business, I've gained so much appreciation and love for sales and, branding, marketing, communications, everything that it's about getting the business. Because, the world lives out of business. You go to the marketplace and you exchange a service or a product for money. And if it's good for the society gives you money back.
Exactly.
And you consume other projects and, and keep the cycle. But if you don't sell, nothing happens.
Well, yes, I used to think that it was always about early on, one of my friends said, I hate you salespeople because you're always trying to convince people to get something that they don't need. And that really stuck with me because that's not how I viewed what I was doing. Yes. I always would meet with somebody and try to listen first and understand them. What do you need? What are you trying to accomplish? And how can what I do in my skills and my knowledge help you get what you want?
Yes.
And I found out that was far better if I treat you like a person, the golden rule.
Yeah.
And if I learn what you need, then the products and services that I represent, I can fill that need.
Yeah. And I think that's also going back to the education system. Nobody explained to you what sales is. When you're growing, you have this idea in your mind, the car salesman, and they want to sell you this product or this thing you don't need, and they're trying to convince you to make that purchase to get whatever is in your pocket. But I think that's changing because now we're a lot more conscious about that. Most companies are moving to the point when, where you stand, which is about the person, and what you're really doing is you're helping the person. You're
Exactly.
doing them a favor. You're making their life better, and just by nature, we wanna, give back to a person that help us. There is one definition of sales that I really like, and it's by Dan Sullivan, and he says, selling is getting someone intellectually engaged in a future result that is good for them and getting them to take action, getting them to emotionally take action to achieve that result. So you understand the transaction part and you said, okay, you give me this, I'll give you that. All right, that makes sense. But the buying decision is emotional.
It is.
That's where you buy with your heart.
Yes, I believe that most times in a transaction, people buy on emotion and then they use facts to back up their emotional decision.
Yes.
It's very rarely the other way, that somebody only uses facts, particularly in the design business where you're looking at aesthetics as part of the decision. And that can be very emotional.
Yeah. And it's a whole different thing when you're selling something and you see you have something that it's valuable for somebody. The way you explain it, the way you project what you're doing, the way you show it is very different than if you're just desperate to get what they have because you want that.
Well, exactly. Yeah, a few years ago, well, more than a few now, after college, I was selling and I called on a customer and I really wanted his business. It was a big account. And I was calling on him. Finally, he said, "You really want my business?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Solve my problems." And he told me what his problems were. And I said, "Okay." And so he said, "Go look at this facility for me and you tell me what my issues are," which I already knew from what he had told me. So I went to this location. I spent a lot of time, a lot of effort doing this, and I put together a full report on all of his problems. And ultimately, I won his business. And as we were going along with his business, if things would crop up, whether it was an installation issue or a maintenance issue or whatever, he said, "The thing, if you can do for me, you will keep my business forever." He said, "Make my life easy. Get rid of these problems for me." And so we figured out a way to keep the problems from getting to him.
Yes.
And I kept his business the whole time he was there and that I was there in that market. And
sure.
I learned a lot from that experience.
Oh, yeah. And that goes back to when we said that people don't buy products or services, they buy experiences. So he was buying that experience. He was buying not having problems.
Exactly.
The product or whatever you were selling, it was just part of the transaction, but the real sell was that.
Exactly. It wasn't the product.
Right.
It was, I was solving his problems and keeping hassle from his life.
Yeah. And even when we buy, the interesting thing about this conversation is that we are consumers and we're sellers every single day.
Right.
Is that what we'll do all the time? We're selling, we're consuming, we're buying, we're making decisions, and we're being impacted by branding messages, by marketing. Sometimes so well, it's so well done that we don't even realize, like, man, why did I pay so much for this?
Well, exactly. And I really do think that as you spend more time with customers and listening to what they really want, really listening, there's a difference between listening and active listening. And many times I'll show up to first meetings and I don't have any product. I just have a notepad or an iPad or something to take notes, because walking into a client you don't know and saying, "Let me tell you what you need," is really kind of silly. It's not very intellectual. How can I know what to provide for you if I don't know you?
Yes.
And I'm fascinated by salespeople that do that, because you're right. We all are buyers and sellers, and all of us have had good and bad experiences.
Yeah.
So when we buy something and we try to get follow-up when it doesn't go right, then we get upset. I am determined never to be that person. So when there's a problem, I want to be the person you call. And sometimes problems for me create opportunities for people to say, "This person is different, and I want to deal with this person because they will go the extra mile, even if there is a problem, to solve the problem."
Oh, sure.
To me, that's a result of bad buying experiences that I've had.
Yeah. And I think when we're selling, even more than understanding that people don't buy products or services, they buy the experience. When you're there selling, they're buying the person. And it's so important when, to me, the most important sell you make in your life is when you buy yourself. When you didn't buy your story and who you are and your confidence, that's what you're selling. So, and people pick up on that. I mean, you can have the product, you can have the solution, you can have the problem. But if when they're interacting with you, they don't feel that confidence, the decision making goes the other way.
Right. Exactly. There was a friend of mine that was in a completely different industry years ago when I was early in selling. And I was asking, he sold a commodity product. And I asked him, I said, how in the world do you do that? You have the exact same product as everybody else. It's a price war. How do you sell so much? And he said, it's very easy. They don't have me. He said, I'm the difference. I'm the differential. Yeah. And he said it with such confidence. And it was the first time in my professional career as a young man that anyone had ever said that to me. I always thought it was the thing.
Yes.
And then I realized, oh my, it's me too.
Yeah.
And so I want to be the differential. I want to be different than everybody else. I want to work harder, better, smarter, faster to deliver for my customers.
Yes. The other thing, and it's like one step after that is, let's say any luxury market, cars, clothes, whatever, it's like, top 5% expensive things. You can always buy the same thing, You can buy, a jacket for $20 or sure. 200 or 2,000 or 20,000 or 200,000. Same product provides the same service. But now what you're buying is how that thing makes you feel about yourself.
Exactly.
That when you have something expensive and you want others to see that you own that expensive thing, makes you feel, good.
Exactly.
Right.
Right.
And that's what I think it's amazing, because now you don't have the person, but now you're buying the brand, and you're buying what the brand makes you look like in front of others.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Exactly how I feel.
This is amazing.
Well, and it is an emotional connection when you buy something particularly something that's expensive. You know? You have those good feelings when you leave that establishment or that car dealership or that person. I still have good relationships with some people that I bought some big things from, and I'll go back to them as long as they're there.
Yes.
I'll keep going back to them because they gave me a good experience the last time.
Yeah, that's one of the challenges I have for myself now that I, own my business, that I have my services, that I sell architecture, branding, strategy. I want to be that top 5 very expensive product or service for people. There is a market for everybody. So every day I feel like in a laboratory cooking recipes to create something very unique. It's very specific that only certain percentage of global population are willing to pay 10 or 20 times for the same product that they can get somewhere else, because it's possible.
Right.
It happens every day.
Well, they have the money, they want that experience, and there are very few people that are willing to provide it.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of people out there that want to sell the lowest price, the cheapest thing. But usually what comes with that is a lower quality of service, a lower quality of follow-up, less caring, because they just don't, there's no margin in it to do that. So if you want the cheapest, there's somebody to sell it to.
Yeah. Tell me about your role at Tarkett, the industry, your team. How do you work? Tell me about that.
So I'm a regional VP for Tarkett. I've had a variety of roles in the industry. And, currently I have an amazing team. And my belief is always, as a leader, I want to be a servant leader. That's kind of a catchphrase today, but I've thought that for years. I don't want to just say that. I want to be that. I really want to serve my team. I want to go the extra mile for them. I want to be the leader that they say, hey, this guy will do things for me that other managers have not. I really believe it's a team. They don't work for me. I work with them. Yeah. We're partners.
Sure.
And so I believe it's everything in life when it comes to an organization, it's all about people. And if you take care of the people and teach and train them and support them, they're going to make me successful.
Yeah.
I want to be the least talented person in the group. I want to surround myself with highly motivated, intelligent people that understand their job and their role to service their customers and clients.
Yeah.
And if I do that, I'll be successful.
Yeah.
And I don't care from an ego standpoint. That doesn't bother me. I just want to serve them. And when I do that, I believe that it will all work out well for me.
How's your typical day or week?
Depends on the day or week, which is probably one of the reasons I like this industry is there is no standard day. I may get up, this morning my phone could rings at 7:00 in the morning, and all of a sudden somebody says, "Hey, I've got an issue. Can you help me with this?" Okay. Let me jump into that one. Some days I'm very planned out where I'm going to see clients with my reps. Sometimes I see clients without them. Sometimes I can get more information from a mutual client when I'm by myself versus when I'm with the reps. So, I manage everything inside the Tarkett portfolio, both from a distribution side, all our resilient products, as well as what we call our direct side, which is LVT and all the forms of carpet tile, those pieces of flooring with the direct sales force. So I manage both of them, and they're very different, and they come with their own set of unique challenges and opportunities. So for me, and it's fun because each day presents unique challenges and opportunities. And so, sometimes I'm doing strategy work. Sometimes I'm making tactical sales calls. Sometimes I'm training. Sometimes I'm planning for the next, quarter, or, sometimes I'm answering senior leadership questions.
Sometimes you're doing podcasts.
Sometimes I'm doing podcasts with you, Jack.
Yeah, no, I love it because I really like variety of things to do. Part of my frustration when I was, an employee just doing like a single task was that I felt that I was underutilized, and I didn't feel that I was living at my potential. There is always a tendency in putting people into boxes and, okay, you're a project manager, then you only do this, or no, you're a salesperson, you only do this, or you're good at this. So the more you limit yourself, then the better for the organization. But what about me as human? Now that I have my business and it's starting, I do everything. And I know at some point I'm going to have to stop doing that, but I really enjoy it. Like, I feel alive. I feel excited. I like doing, 10 different things in one day and having my 25 checklist for the day. And I love, go from here, switch, do the other thing. And, that kind of makes me feel like I'm fully utilizing myself.
Well, I can see the energy in you, and ever since I've known you, you've got a lot of energy. I'm amazed by your story, and I admire your efforts and what you've done and accomplished thus far, and I'm sure you will accomplish much more in the future.
Thanks.
I really do believe that. And, in my background, I had the same things. I started in sales. I loved the variety of sales, but I wanted to do other things as well. I actually was president of a company. We did a startup as well. It was a hybrid network satellite company that in the early years, we figured out a way to beam satellite packages to kiosks.
Wow.
Before it could be done like today, it can be done, but go back 15 years, that was not easy to do. But what I loved about that was the unique integration of technology, media, sales. And so I did all that, built websites, and we worked with, we did stuff for ESPN, NBC, Motorola. We did a lot of different things. And I was just energized, like you said, by that experience. And so I got to use my marketing background. We developed websites, talk about branding. I get excited when you talk about branding because I think you and I have talked before that I studied branding at Harvard and did some outside work. I didn't go get a degree, but I did a lot of work on branding, and it is not the same as marketing. And a lot of marketing people think, marketing, branding, it's all the same thing. It's not. And you have to approach it differently.
Yes.
And those that don't, you can always see the companies where their marketers aren't branding people because they make the same mistakes. So I thoroughly enjoyed doing that with a small company, which we ultimately sold as technology moved on and there were a variety of reasons I left that business, and then
Yes.
I got back into this.
Yes, I have like a definition of those three things, because that's so critical to understand the difference, and not even understand it, but at least to have your own clear differentiation. So I see that branding is the story. That's the story about the business or about the person. There is a story, and that's unique. It's very unique. Marketing is telling the story, right? So marketing, it's everything that's telling the story when the person is not present. So, print, digital, advertising, brochures, business cards, websites, those things should be telling the brand story, right?
Yes.
And the purpose of branding is to communicate to a prospect what the brand is and have them predisposed to do business with you. So when you meet them face to face, they already have the information. They know what the brand is. They know the benefits. So when you're with them, then your job as a salesperson is to, influence the decision.
Yes.
Right. And it's a lot easier when you work starting from branding, marketing, and sales, because if you only sell, well, the first time I see you, what's this product? Like you have not been exposed to what it is. And the brand, which is the big thing, is the story. So that's why I do a lot of brand strategy, and I love helping businesses clarify their brand DNA, because that's the most unique and the most important thing they have. It's just that they don't know it.
Absolutely.
They just go and do the transaction, and it works. At some point it works. But when you really understand the branding, it takes the business to a whole different level.
You're exactly right. And branding, to create a brand, takes much longer than a tactical marketing campaign. To create a brand and that feeling that people get when they see the brand can take 3 to 5 years. But a marketing strategy and tactic can go sell that and generate revenue much faster than the brand can invade your mind and your thoughts and your feelings.
Yeah.
And so I one of the things from my perspective with my team now is, if marketing can help drive sales to our salespeople, that's the role of marketing. Imagine if Nike had to have a salesperson for every pair of shoes they sold. It's just not cost effective, right?
Sure.
But their brand is so big that they still have salespeople, but you don't have to tell anybody who Nike is, right? You either like it or you don't, but you know who they are.
Yeah.
So I feel if it's in our industry, whether you're an architect or designer, or you're doing what we do on the manufacturing side, when marketing is driving people to your brand from their tactics, whether it's an ad in a trade magazine or whether it's a product launch, that's when marketing's doing their job. But the brand has to be set long before that.
We'll be right back with more from the Power of Design podcast.
The Power of Design podcast is brought to you by OSA Studio, a multidisciplinary design firm focused on creating impactful experiences through the power of design. We partner with our clients to create buildings, interior spaces, brands, and strategies that help you deliver a successful project. As a minority-owned firm, we are committed to building a diverse platform of curious and driven design professionals so we can together pursue our full potential. For more information, please visit us at www.osastudio.com.
So, I started this podcast because I always felt there was a disconnection between construction, design, and real estate. I feel that, we're the three key elements that create the built environment, but you can't do it on your own. So we interact during projects or maybe networking events, but always the conversations, I feel that they're still very superficial because they're very transactional. They're typically about, the project or, quick drinks. And I felt that the podcast was a good way to really bring that community together, because you sell a product that it's everywhere, in workplaces and, educational buildings. It's everywhere, and it's part of the design. And that product, that, let's say, the carpet, lives in there with other materials, right? Somebody made a decision. There are branding decisions that goes along with that. There is quality, there are many things that involve that. And I want to know, from your point of view, interacting with those three buckets. How do you work with them? What's important to you, your relationship with those three?
That's a good question. And I think what you've done to try to connect the groups is excellent, because sometimes it feels like everybody's just trying to do their job, their portion of the job. And I think when you bring people together as a team, and when everyone can see the other person's strength and value, and again, get to know each other personally, know your goals, then it should bring forth a better project at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so I do think when you can connect those different groups and with different motivations, sometimes architects and designers, sometimes they want to build the most fabulous design ever. Sometimes they just want to put a box out there, and it depends on who the client is, So the more everybody understands what their goals are from the onset, the general contractor's trying to bring it in the quality at the lowest cost, if they can, so they can make some money, because it can be low margins.
Yeah.
And you have to value them, because the generals are the people that make it happen.
Yeah.
So it's critical. You've got to have the architect and designers together so that you're designing to that end, and what does the user want?
Yes. Who would you say are your clients? And I know it's not just one group of people, there might be many, but who's your main client?
Well, we call on end users, whether it's someone like a Bank of America, or in the workplace space, we call on hospital systems.
Yeah.
I managed in Ohio and Cleveland for a long time. Like Cleveland Clinic was one of our biggest clients up there. So in the healthcare market, but the products and services that a workplace client needs or wants is completely different than what an acute care facility needs. Yeah. It's also very different than what an MOB facility in healthcare needs. And then when you go to, we do a lot of work in higher ed, and that client is very different than the other two as well.
Sure.
Their customer base it's the kids at the university, but it's also their parents, because their parents are the ones that make the visit with them and decide, do I write this check?
Right.
So each one of those client segments is different. And so we approach them differently because they have different needs. Mm-hmm. And generally we know what they are, but again, like I started, until you sit down with them face to face, do you really understand the specific differences to that segment and what we try to provide?
Yeah, and I know that a lot of your business also comes through designers.
Yes.
Recommending or specifying the product. What would you say is the percentage of sales that goes through designers versus end user?
That's a great question. I would say it's probably 65% through design and 35% through the users. Designers are critical, and one of the things I am grateful for in my career is that I've had a lot of mentors. I've had architects mentor me, and I don't want to mention names because there have been so many.
Yeah.
But I've been on trips with architects, and they talk about architecture, and I'm just like a sponge listening to them. So through years of doing that and looking at buildings, walking spaces, I've had a tremendous amount of influence from the architectural community. My designer friends, the same thing. I'll tell you a quick story. Early on, this is my first year out of school selling flooring, and a designer, very talented designer, selected a product that I thought the colors and pattern might have been one of the most awful looking things that we had to sell. Yeah. And this designer said, "No, Bill, I'm buying this. I'm using it for the space." And I'm like, fantastic, because we have to sell stuff to keep our jobs.
Yeah.
Great. And I kept on thinking, this is not going to work. And boy, was I proven wrong, and I learned a great lesson. This woman pulled everything together, furniture, fabric, lighting with the flooring. And when I walked in that finished space to walk the job, I couldn't believe how beautiful it was. And that was right there in that moment. I said, "Oh, Bill, you just learned a valuable lesson."
But you know what that is? That's the power of design.
It is.
That's the power of design.
Well, and from that moment and all the education I got from my friends teaching me about design, teaching me about architecture, I realized and was taught that everything in our world has been designed.
Yeah, by someone.
Somebody designed these lights. Somebody designed this table. Everything. Someone selected the exact paint color to put on the wall.
Yes.
And I have a tremendous amount of respect for every one of those creators and those artists, because that's what I believe they are, do. And so I just have a tremendous amount of respect for them. And I'm grateful to have learned from such talented people throughout my career.
Yeah. And that's a difficult thing, at least for me, when I'm working on architectural projects and you're working, and you're in my industry, but when you're working with an end user or a client that, they do anything that has nothing to do with design, like, they don't understand, they may even see a floor plan and what this is. And when you have a vision in your mind and you know that it's going to be good and they start like picking apart your design, you're like, I know what you mean. That you need to wait until you visit the space with lighting, with acoustics, with colors. That's when things are going to come to life. I don't even like when you're judging materials just looking at one tile or like one carpet tile. Like, you're never going to experience that when it's installed.
Exactly.
And that's what I love about technology now. So I use, BIM 3-dimensional modeling for my business, and everything I do, not only renderings, I'll do virtual reality for everything. Now, when a client is seeing the design, he can judge much better because now they understand how things comes together. And the VR has been a great tool for me to make that bridge.
Well, I'll tell you a quick story. When my wife and I had some rooms in our home being designed, she said, "I want to hire a designer. I don't have time." I said, "Fantastic." So we got a designer, but I said, "Here's the ground rules," because I had lived what you just just discussed. And I said, whatever the designer says, if they're gonna give us one or two examples of what they want to do, we're not going to pick it apart. We're going to pick one.
Yes.
Because we've told them what we want and they've put it together.
Yeah.
And so sure enough, as we start going through the process, my wife says, what do you think about this color or that color? I'm like, no, we said we weren't going to do this.
Yeah.
She says, okay, you're right. And we let the designer do exactly what they wanted. We picked this scheme, and it was fantastic. It was a tremendous experience. It was less stress for us.
Of course.
We did what they wanted.
That's an educated client.
Right. But I wouldn't have done that had I not had the experience and watched clients tear apart wonderful designers' ideas.
Oh yeah, happens every day.
Yeah, every day.
It's interesting because when I look at a project, if you're my client, it's not my project, it's your project. Like, you're paying for it, you're gonna use it. So there is this sense of like, you're like an advisor, you're guiding, but you should trust me that I'm gonna use your money to give you what you want. But that trust, it's what's hard. To me, it's all about that, how do you trust that person that, okay, I have no idea, I'm nervous, but let's see what the end result is going to be. And that even goes back to branding. If you have a strong brand as a designer, then people, they don't care and pay more. There are many architects that they charge a lot of money and their buildings are extremely expensive, but people are buying the brand.
They're buying the brand, yeah.
How they feel when they say, I pay for that architect.
Well, you just used a word that's really important to me, and the word is trust. And when I do sales trainings, I will tell people that word is possibly the single most important thing in sales, but it's also in life. Because if you have trust, it can impact literally nations, governments, families, all kinds of organizations. If you don't have trust, it will influence it in the negative way. So once you have that trust and that dialogue, which again, it goes back to that relationship, then you can build upon that. And once people trust each other and say, okay, I know you're good at what you do. I know you know what you're doing. I'm going to trust that you're going to give me something great. And usually I find out when you do have that trusting relationship, you get a much better project.
Oh, yeah.
Much better outcome.
Yeah. What do you think about the current economy? You know, we are very busy as an industry.
Yes.
There are a lot of projects going on. You know, everybody's spending money. We're like having fun.
Right.
What do you think about that? What do you think about the future?
Well, I think what's going on right now is fantastic, because I remember, not too long ago where the market was crashing, everybody was cutting jobs, and it was not a good time for our industry. The backlog in architect firms was very low and very short, and the last several years have just been explosive, and which is fantastic for everybody. I do see this continuing for a while. At least the next year or so. At some point, there's going to be a dip, as there always is, I think. But I do think we're hopefully on better footing as a country. But I think our industry continues to grow. I do see tremendous changes. We were talking earlier about spaces like WeWork. People are evaluating, do we keep people in an office? There's a lot of, commuting and working from home and all that. There has been pluses and minuses with that.
Yeah.
So what we're looking at is, is there going to be a change from office space? Are people going to be, we're already seeing some different spaces come along, shared spaces. So I think the industry will continue to change and evolve, but I see the market still being good for the foreseeable future.
What do you think is the biggest problem your clients face today?
That's a good question. Right now, I think in the flooring world, one of the biggest things is moisture in slabs. It's costing people a lot of money. There's a lot of contractors that, you want to escape costs, and so they don't do the right thing, and then all of a sudden you get a moisture problem, and it, costs you hundreds of thousands of dollars. If you'd have done it right, you didn't get hit with it, So moisture's one of the biggest issues we see. The biggest change in the industry, at least one of the ones that's impacted me, is the speed at which projects come out of the ground and get up and going, which, people do things to slabs to create challenges for the flooring industry. But I think speed is something that's really changed. It used to be, we're going to build a building, and it's going to take this long to design and pre-bid and, get it going. Well, now I think those cycles have just been incredibly accelerated.
Oh, yeah, I feel it all the time.
Yeah, everybody wants everything fast. And, you think about it, our parents, when a fax machine came out, everybody's like, oh, that's amazing. Now on your phone, it's like I have the power of NASA in my pocket.
Oh, yeah.
The problem with that is everybody expects everything 24/7, like we're all Amazon, like you don't sleep, Jack. In the middle of the night, I can call you and you're going to wake up. Well, that's just not reality. So I think our society is learning to deal with the speed at which things are changing.
Yeah.
But how do we maintain some sense of life for our families, and we still have downtime where we can turn it off? And I think this young generation is going to have to figure that out, is how do we not make work happen 24/7, because our clients need things 24/7. And I mean, heck, we could probably go into every architect's office at night and there's people there working all hours.
Oh, yeah. And I feel that, technology is advancing society and the world and everything. And we're just learning how to relate ourselves with technology. So far, I think we don't know how to do it, and we're just desperate consuming technology, as much as we can, because we love it. And it's just hits of dopamine every single day.
It is.
And we love it.
Exactly.
But there is a point where, the more technology, the more dehumanizing society becomes. Even though some things like social media, they're satisfying like human needs, like connection, appreciation, community, that's bridging that gap. And I think that's part of why people love social media. But at some point, it's just gonna, the price we're paying is very high.
It is.
And I think part of that's why now you get a lot of industries emerging, like, health and wellness and mindfulness. Like, people are realizing, oh my God, we're becoming robots. The more we consume technology, we need to keep our humanity somehow. And there's a lot of movements around that.
Well, it's funny to me that every time the phone buzzes, dings, rings, people stare at their phone. Mm-hmm. Now we look at our watch. Oh, somebody. So it's funny to me, every once in a while, I'll look at one of my friends. You can be in the middle of a conversation. You could be mid-sentence and, I'm not paying, hold on, you're not that important. Let me look at my phone. And it's bizarre. I said to a buddy of mine recently, I said, you actually don't have to respond every second something comes in. And he was laughing. He said, it's such a habit. Well, it's a bad habit we've gotten into. It's a bad habit. If I can't have a conversation with you and I have to look at my phone 27 times, that's not good.
No.
That's not good for any of us.
But everybody does it, so it's normal because everybody's doing it.
Yeah.
It's disrespectful too.
It is.
With disrespecting others and ourselves.
Well, I do have to share something that I found was interesting. So I had a friend of mine who's an incredible business person, and I've known him for years. He's one of my good friends. He's on the West Coast, and we were talking about this concept of ghosting. Where people will accept a job and then never show up. Don't call, don't say anything. And I said, gosh, that's so disrespectful. And he looked at me and he said, to you. I said, no, that's so disrespectful that someone would actually say they're coming in and someone count on them and they not fulfill what they said they were going to do. And he said, to you. And what I realized he was saying was, to these people that are doing it, it's not disrespectful. It's just they don't want that job, even though they said and committed. Yeah. Now, to me, I'm still thinking that's disrespectful.
Sure.
But he's right. I guess if people that do that don't think it's disrespectful, well, then maybe to them it isn't. Or they're being disrespectful willingly, knowingly, which is really uncool anyway. So I think technology has done this. And also what has done this is an incredible economy. So right now, the state of South Carolina is essentially at zero unemployment. The 2% that they have are almost unemployable. So when the market changes, I think that will change, and how we use technology may change as well.
Oh yeah, I know this year, 2019, it was the first time in human history where more than 50% of global population has access to internet. So imagine the room for growth, which only 50%. So when you see emerging industries, e-commerce is number one, cybersecurity, anything that is related to technology. And, then when you start talking about automation and AI and all those things, it's going to change really, really fast.
Yes, it is. It is indeed.
How does the power of design impact who you are and what you do?
It really impacts everything. And like I said earlier, that I was fortunate to have people teach me architectural and design and the value of design early in my career. And so it impacts everything. It impacts the way I view spaces. It impacts, how we show products at times. When the restaurants and bars I like to go to are usually the ones that are better designed. It's not just about the food. It used to be, this place has a great steak or whatever. Now it's like I can get a great steak at a bunch of places, but what's the better environment? What makes me feel good when I'm there or have fun? If I want a festive environment, if we're going out with a group, we go to a space that's fun and lively. Yeah. And so I think design has impacted pretty much everything I do. And I'm a part-time musician. I love music, and it impacts whether I'm looking at design of my studio or guitars. It impacts everything, the way I view everything in life. So design's had a big impact on me. And I would have never thought that based on my educational background and the things I've studied.
Yeah, it impacts everybody. It's just now you're aware of it.
Exactly right. I am aware of it.
Well, Bill, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate who you are and what you do, and you sharing your ideas and your impact in the world with me.
Well, thanks, Jack, for inviting me.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Power of Design podcast. Remember to rate and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Find out more about Jack and OSA Studio at osastudio.com and follow us on Instagram at the Power of Design podcast. Thank you.